Were people happier in the past? While today we live in a world full of censorship, inverted values, and a lot of cultural trash, in the 80s everything seemed much simpler, more authentic, and pleasant. Whenever you turned on the radio, you were sure to hear some high-quality music, like this classic here. That one makes you feel nostalgic for the 80s, even if you never lived through that decade. But despite being cheerful and nostalgic, today, more than 40 years later, this song seems much more like a premonition of the chaos we live in now, and a warning that whole golden era was about to end. Today, I'm going to tell you the truth behind Everybody Wants to Rule the World by Tears for Fears. I'm Guilherme, and you're watching Decipher Hits. Everybody Wants to Rule the World is the closest humanity has ever come to inventing a time machine. You play this song and you're instantly teleported back to 1985. That year, the first edition of Rock in Rio debuted in Brazil, with bands like Queen, Iron Maiden, Scorpions, and AC/DC performing here. And while Madonna, Prince, and Michael Jackson dominated MTV, movies like Rambo, Rocky IV, and Back to the Future dominated the theaters. In the world of games, Nintendo released Super Mario Bros., forever revolutionizing the video game industry. It was in the middle of this golden year that Tears for Fears released Everybody Wants to Rule the World, a true turning point for the English band, which reached the top of the music charts and became one of the biggest names in synth pop and new wave. But to really understand the story of this song, we're going to need to get into the DeLorean and go back a little further in time. In 1981, friends Roland Orzabal and Kurt Smith were forming a new band, but they still needed a good name. That year, Kurt was reading the book Prisoners of Pain by psychologist Arthur Jonow when he came across the phrase, tears as a replacement for fears in it. The phrase refers to one of Jonow's theories, which says that you can heal your childhood traumas by reliving your pain through screams and intense crying. Kurt was fascinated by the idea, told Roland, who also loved it, and the two decided not only to name their new band in honor of this theory, but also to use it as a source of inspiration for all their songs from then on. That's how they became Tears for Fears, and in 1983 they released their first album, The Hurting. With completely obscure lyrics talking about childhood traumas, abandonment, and emotional suffering, the album was almost entirely based on Jonow's ideas, and the album cover itself made that very clear. The result captivated the crowd, especially in the United Kingdom, where the album reached #1 on the charts thanks to hits like Pale Shelter. Change. And Mad World. As expected, their record label, Mercury Records, pressured Tears for Fears to release their next album as quickly as possible. However, the band did exactly the opposite. They did everything very calmly because they wanted to produce something they could really be proud of, and not just The Hurting Part 2, as Kurt said in an interview. We were very introverted on The Hurting, which was a very dark album. We felt the need to be more extroverted on the next record. That's how, little by little, they started working on the songs for the next album. And I say little by little because they literally spent an entire year composing, recording, and perfecting each of the songs on the new album. Songs from The Big Chair, which brought classics like Head Over Heels, and the song Shout, which had in its chorus a clear reference to Genova's theory about screams and cries.
Shout, shout, let it all out.
At first, the album was supposed to have only 7 tracks, since the last song created, Shout, was so much work for the band. It took up almost half of the total time they had available to use the studio, about 4 months.
But it was during this prolonged struggle to finish Shout
that something changed the band's history forever. Near the end of the sessions, Roland Orzabal started to play around with his guitar, strumming 2 simple chords repeatedly, almost without noticing. Producer Chris Hughes, who was beside him, heard the repeating chords and immediately loved them.
And I was listening to that and thought, what is this? What is he? And he wasn't too concerned. He wasn't that interested in making a song, but every now and then he would just play it.
For Roland, it was just 2 bland chords he was playing to pass the time. But Chris Hughes saw great potential in that riff.
I said, you have to write that song.
I know it's just 2 chords, but it's really, really good,
said Chris. But Roland didn't seem to care. Faced with that, Chris Hughes took the lead. If Roland didn't want to record the new song, Chris decided to create a backing track for it, with synthesizers and electronic drums, to show Roland and the rest of the band how amazing it would be.
And I played 2 chords and sequenced them with a simple drum part and some backing.
But, incredibly, Roland still wasn't convinced. And Kurt Smith wasn't even impressed. They said it was too light and didn't fit with the rest of the album. Not even the band's keyboardist, Ian Stanley, liked the idea.
He thought it was lightweight, couldn't see anything in it. I think Kurt thought the same, even Roland thought the same, you know. We were sort of against it. It was just too... It wasn't anything, you know.
But Chris kept insisting on the song until one afternoon, Roland's wife, Carolyn Orzabal, went to the studio, heard the producer working on the beat, and fell in love with the song.
And she said, wow, what is this? It's great. I agreed, saying it's great too. Tell your husband.
Carolyn convinced Roland, and it was only after that that the band decided to start writing Everybody Wants to Rule the World. Really,
my ex-wife, Carolyn, who was the song's biggest champion.
At that point, Chris Hill had already come up with several ideas to make the song less repetitive and more interesting, even with just 2 chords, starting with the introduction. For him, it should sound enchanting.
He knew there needed to be a calling, some kind of sound you'd hear across the room, and you'd go, I like that. And I worked with Ian on that, and I said it's some kind of just a simple chimey synth, and it sort of drops down, die-doom, some kind of... And he went off like this, and he nailed it.
After that, Roland Orzabal finally gave in and developed a beautiful sequence for Ian's intro.
So one of the first things Roland brought to this was the beautiful opening arpeggio, which is guitar and synth.
Yeah, guitar.
And that sets the whole...
But for me, one of Roland's most incredible contributions to the song's instrumental was this magnificent guitar solo. Pretty chilling, right? With the instrumental done, Roland wrote all the lyrics, but they still needed a title. And here's some context. That year, 1985, the world was at the height of the so-called Cold War, which was a period of tension and constant threats between the United States and the Soviet Union. With that in mind, Roland Orzabal named the new song Everybody Wants to Go to War. He was getting close, but that phrase still didn't sound right, until Roland heard a song by The Clash on the radio, called Charlie, Don't Surf, which contained the phrase, everybody wants to rule the world in the first verse. Roland liked the phrase so much that he used it as the title of the new song. From then on, the melody flowed beautifully. However, the borrowed lyric did not go unnoticed by the legendary Joe Strummer, lead singer of The Clash and composer of Charlie, Don't Surf. According to Strummer himself, sometime later, he confronted Roland in a restaurant, saying to him, "Hey man, you owe me $5. Strummer was just joking, but Roland took out his wallet and insisted on giving Strummer $5. Afterwards, the two laughed about the situation and remained friends. As I said, the song was written during the height of the Cold War, and the lyrics perfectly captured the tension and fear that the conflict between the United States and the Soviet Union would escalate into a nuclear war. If you haven't focused on the lyrics and just enjoyed the song's upbeat rhythm, what I'm about to share may surprise you. Welcome to your life. There's no turning back. Even while you sleep, we will find you. This first verse sounds like the Soviet state speaking directly to the citizen. From the moment you are born, you belong to the system. There's no way to escape. There's no turning back. In this system of absolute control, every step you take is watched all the time by the government, marking your total loss of freedom. This line fits perfectly with the society described by George Orwell in the book 1984. It featured the character Big Brother, a government entity that was omnipresent and watched every movement, every step, and every word of the citizens, all through television screens. Does that sound familiar to you? The lyrics, "Even while you sleep, we will find you," are practically a musical translation of the book's slogan, which said, "Big Brother is watching you." In other words, the line is a brilliant and frightening critique of the oppression of the Soviet regime, wrapped in an apparently cheerful melody. In the next verse, the lyrics respond as if from the American perspective. "It's my own creation, it's my own remorse. Help me decide, help me make the most of freedom and pleasure." Here, the other side of the coin appears. Individualism, the pursuit of pleasure, freedom, and the American dream, but also burdened with guilt and regret. When he says it's my own creation, it's my own remorse, he's referring to the invention and use of the atomic bomb by the United States. This use, in fact, motivated the beginning of the arms race between world powers and the start of the Cold War itself. This fear of the world's end is also shown in the bridge when he says, "There's a room where the light won't find you, holding hands while the walls come tumbling down. When that happens, I'll be right behind you." This room refers to nuclear shelters, and the light is the flash from the explosion. At that moment, people will hold hands because it's the last time they'll see each other alive. In short, the song reminds us to make the most of the pleasure and freedom we still have, because nothing lasts forever. But the meaning of the lyrics isn't limited to the Cold War, considering that Roland changed the title of the song. That also helped make the lyrics would be more ambiguous and less direct, allowing each person to choose their own meaning. In fact, one of the parts of the song has nothing to do with war, and was actually a jab from Tears for Fears at their own record label, Mercury Records. You know when they say, "What a shame they had to make it fade"? So fade refers to fade out, which is that effect at the end of old songs where they never actually ended. It was the volume gradually lowering until it went silent. It turns out that while they were producing the song Shout, the record label complained that the song was too long to play on the radio and kept bothering the band to shorten it. That was one reason Shout took so long to produce and caused so much stress during its creation. In the end, the band ended up giving in to the record label's pressure and added a fade out at the end of the song Shout. Roland and Kurt hated the idea, and as a form of protest, they put this dig at the record label in the lyrics of "Everybody wants to rule the world." But without a doubt, one of the most striking aspects of the song is the iconic music video. It starts with Kurt Smith driving a convertible car down a road in the California desert, while a child points two toy guns at him. As soon as the song starts playing, the video alternates scenes of the band playing in a studio, with shots of a glider flying over the desert, two men in suits dancing in front of fuel pumps, and several people riding tricycles on the dunes. If you try to find an explanation for these scenes, you might end up frustrated since none of it seems to tell a story. However, the concept behind the music video was much simpler to understand. As the singer himself explained, "Everybody Wants to Rule the World" was the kind of song made to listen to while driving down the road in the United States. So we went to the desert in California. We got a car, Austin Healey 3000, and we drove. That's the idea behind the video. But despite this apparent simplicity, the filming was quite complicated and turned into real chaos, as Kurt Smith said in an interview. "The filming was a disaster. I remember the director crying on the second night of shooting. We had an accident while filming the motorcycles and off-road vehicles. A kid was thrown and hit his head. He passed out. The producer of the video, an American woman, just stood there chanting Buddhist mantras. We were desperately trying to find an ambulance while she was singing. Fortunately, none of that was serious, and when the finished video reached MTV, all the effort was worth it. The video became one of the most requested on the channel, and the song "Everybody Wants to Rule the World" became the band's first track to reach #1 on the charts in the United States. And that's how Tears for Fears ended up conquering the world with a song they had no faith in, and that was included on the album at the last minute. For me, "Everybody Wants to Rule the World" is the ultimate song of the 80s, man. I think if aliens came to Earth 1,000 years from now and wanted to know what the 80s were like, I'd play that song for them. There you go, pure 80s. But what's most impressive is how the lyrics, even though they talk about the tensions of that time, keep getting more and more relevant. The fear of war, unfortunately, still exists. And thousands of young people who don't even know each other still kill one another on the battlefield because of the decisions of a few old men in suits who hate each other, who know each other, but who make all the decisions like cowards in a little air-conditioned room. That's exactly what the song Zombie is about. A 90s classic that changed the course of a war that had already lasted almost 100 years. I've already told this whole story over in the VIP section of the channel. To watch it, just click on the video that's showing up here on the side and become a member of Decipher Hits. I'll be waiting for you there. An attack in England left 50 people injured and, unfortunately, claimed the lives of 2 children. Those responsible claim to be acting on behalf of everyone in their country, Ireland. However, the singer Dolores O'Riordan, an Irish woman, did not agree. In response,